All right, welcome back. It is the Vegas Take, Sharp and Shapiro. So glad you could join us. A reminder, hour number 2, we will be joined by the legend himself, Jerry Springer. He's got a new show coming out. But it is Wednesday, and we all know what that means, right? That means it is Michael Avenatti Day, our favorite lawyer, joining us right now live on the Vegas Take. Michael, always love to have you, my man. How you doing?
Great to be here as always, gentlemen.
So the big announcement we wanted to make, Michael, is it true that you're going to be the next White House press secretary for Donald Trump, or is that fake news?
No, that's fake news. I may be a lot of things in the future, but that I will not be. Although, I got to tell you, it doesn't look to be a terrible job these days because actually you don't ever have to really do your job, but evidently you still get paid.
If you're a good liar,
right.
if you're Pinocchio, I think you could be very good at that job.
And the truth isn't exactly at a premium either.
Yes. All right, Mike.
Well, no, look, you could go a year and a half without having a press conference, and probably still get paid. I mean, what are we at now? 100 days or something?
It's been like 100 days since Sarah Huckabee Sanders was up there, but that's actually utterly ridiculous. But let's get to the serious news. I did mention on social media, as did you, that we had an announcement to make. We are collaborating with you to call it the Avenatti Hour. And a lot of people on social media have been wanting to hear a little bit more of you on this show. They feel like the segment is a little too short, and we had a private conversation. So we are going to give you an entire hour weekly on the Vegas Take on Wednesdays from 7 to 8 p.m.
Yeah, and I'm excited about it. I think it's going to be great. A lot of people have been urging me to do a podcast, and I think this is the best of both worlds. We're going to do the broadcast with you guys, and then we'll have the ability to disseminate it. And look, I've always enjoyed coming on the show and the banter and the discussions, and I think it's going to be great. We're going to have a lot to talk about, no question.
And I appreciate that. We're going to have a lot of fun. All right, so let's talk. Let's start with the banter discussion. Let's start with Alyssa Milano. I've always been a big fan of hers, and she goes on social media and she starts to go after you as far as the allegations of I guess assault, which never really happened because not only were there no charges were even filed. So she says that they were totally disgusting and that she was disavowing you. And then you went on Twitter and you went after her. You guys went at it a little bit. Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, I too have been a fan of hers actually. And last year I came to know her on a personal level, and I considered her to be a friend. And then when I was arrested last November on these bogus, fabricated claims of domestic violence by someone who was trying to make a name for herself and get famous, Alyssa Milano, instead of reaching out to me and saying, hey, is this true? Or, hey, I'm disturbed by this or anything else, she immediately took to social media, called the claims in TMZ disgusting, and said she was disavowing me. To her 3 million followers. And, that's just not what you do when you're a public figure of that stature, especially when it's someone that you know on a personal level.
And I agree. I agree with a lot of what she says, particularly when it comes to abortion. I'm a little surprised that she just made that assumption about you when there was no proof or evidence to support the fact. Obviously, she didn't do her homework. And I think she should apologize to you, quite frankly.
Well, I think she should as well. And frankly, I waited until later in November, it was announced there'd be no felony charges after a thorough investigation. Then it was turned over to the city attorney's office. They did their own investigation. They said, we're not going to press any misdemeanor charges, but we'll have what's called an office hearing, and then we'll make a final determination. And then last week we had the office hearing, and they informed me that it's over. There will be no charges, and there should have never even been a consideration of charges because I didn't do anything wrong. And so we've had, 3 investigations. I've been fully cleared. And I've been very disappointed that she has not apologized for what she did in going after me and just admit that she jumped the gun. She judged me before there were any facts or evidence. And now, of course, I'm seeing that in connection with some other proceedings that I'm involved in. But I'm going to tell you something. We're going to teach a lesson to a lot of people that want to jump to conclusions about guilt when they hear about somebody being arrested, because I'm going to be cleared.
And it seems like social media kind of just holds their own court these days. The same thing happened to Luke Walton. Luke Walton was accused of sexual assault. He was never convicted of anything. There was a huge investigation. He almost lost his new job. Luke is the former coach of the LA Lakers. He almost lost his new job with the Sacramento Kings. But it's kind of the same thing with your situation.
Well, I agree. And look, a lot of people say, well, you didn't advocate for due process for Judge Kavanaugh. And look, they don't know what they're talking about. Actually, I've always advocated for due process with everybody. I've said that when there's an allegation or a claim, there should be a thorough investigation, and then a determination should be made. And that's exactly what I asked be done with Julie Swetnick and the Kavanaugh nomination. That's exactly what I've demanded in other instances, and I've asked for that, obviously, in my situations. I have not been a hypocrite. I've been consistent from day one.
If you're just joining us, attorney Michael Avenatti. Okay, Michael, let's talk about your best friend, Biff, also known as Donald Trump Jr. So he mentioned your name the other day in a speech in Orlando, I believe, and I've just been blasting him in the first segment because I don't know if you saw this, too. He goes after Joe Biden for saying that Biden wants to cure cancer. Joe Biden lost his son several years ago to cancer. And then Biff goes up there on a stage and starts attacking Biden when it's Donald Trump who's seeking a multi-billion-dollar cut to medical research. I mean, what do you make of all this and your good friend Biff?
Well, he represents so many things that I'm disgusted by, frankly. This is a kid. I mean, first of all, I think the guy is a punk. I think he's one of the biggest punks in America, frankly. He is somebody that was born with a silver spoon in his mouth and a gold toilet under his ass. He will never accomplish 5% of what his father accomplished, and that's saying something. His greatest accomplishment is being part of the Lucky Sperm Club. And the guy thinks that he is so talented because he can stand up in front of a few, 10, 20,000 people, sycophants for his father, and, take shots at me. But he refuses. He's never been permitted and has refused and has ducked me for 18 months. He won't appear with me on any TV show, on any radio show, or anything similar to that because he knows that he will be made a fool of, that people will see him for the fool that he is. I mean, in one of the few instances where I actually agree with his father on something, his father said that Don Jr. had the worst judgment of anyone in the world. I don't know if it's anyone in the world or 99.9% of the people in the world, but I would agree with that. I mean, This guy, if he was not Donald Trump's son, he'd be an absolute nobody. And I hear people talking about him running for the presidency of the United States in 2024. I mean, if this guy is elected president of the United States, it's over. We're done.
Can you imagine if Biff got into an intellectual discussion with Jared Kushner, what that would sound like? Like if they just had a grade school conversation about, let's just say, math, geometry, geography. How do you think that conversation would go? Because I think I think they both have very low IQs.
Well, I think they both have very low IQs, but they also have, the same thing in common, which is that, Ivanka carries them both around in her purse.
That's true. That's a good point. Speaking of Don Jr., I had a woman by the name of Amy Tarkanian in studio. She's the former Nevada State GOP, and I asked her about Don Jr., and she said she's a huge fan of Don Jr. This all happens on the air. I look at her and I say, can you please name me one accomplishment that Don Jr. has ever done in his life? She couldn't name me one thing. So why is it you think that there are so many, I shouldn't say so many, but there are people out there on the right that like this guy?
Well, because he's a cheerleader for his father. Yeah. Right? I mean, that's what they like. They like the fact that he goes out there and, pops off on stage and on Fox News and otherwise and is, such a cheerleader for his father when, in essence, he should pipe down and let the adults in the room actually handle things.
Yeah, no, I would agree with you. Okay, so I want to talk about, I usually don't talk to you about some Democrats. I want to talk to you about Ocasio-Cortez a little bit because she actually made a remark the other day that I disagree with. We know that there is an issue at the border. We know that there are people out there, kids and adults, that are not maybe being treated the way they deserve to be treated in inhumane ways. And I would agree with her. But she compared it to concentration camps. I thought that was a really poor choice of words. I thought she made a mistake. She refuses to apologize. I think she puts the cause and makes the cause, she kind of, I guess you could say she take a couple steps back, when she uses a term like that. Would you agree?
Well, I would agree with your assessment 100%. Look, I've represented, over 70 mothers and children at our southern border. I was, involved in that effort very early on last year. I've spent a lot of time with a lot of these individuals who have been trying to come to the U.S. for a better life, who have had their kids literally snatched from their sides. These are heartbreaking stories, and I've been on the front line of this for a long time. So I have a basis of knowledge relating to that. I also, happened to tour the concentration camps, Birkenau and Auschwitz, and a couple others a number of years ago in connection with a trip that I took. I spent a lot of time, actually, at those camps. I was horrified by what I saw. I mean, that doesn't mean I have experience with the camps by any stretch, but, I've seen that with my own eyes. It was a really impactful trip, probably the most impactful trip of my life, actually. But, look, I couldn't agree with you more. I think it was not only a poor choice of words, I don't think it's even close. That does not mean that we should diminish these holding facilities that have been established for these little kids that have been snatched from their parents. I'm not meaning to diminish the conditions, which are horrific by any stretch of the imagination. But to compare them to concentration camps does a disservice to the cause at the southern border, and it also does a disservice, frankly, to the millions of Jews who were exterminated at concentration camps and obviously to the Jewish community. I think it's negative across the board, in my view, and she should have admitted her mistake and moved on. And instead, she's doubled down on it.
Right.
And I think it's a mistake. And it's an example of why I said last week, if you remember, that I'm not ready to turn the keys to the Democratic Party over
do remember
to
that.
ACO.
Mm-hmm.
And her reasoning, her entire reasoning is because people are dying at the southern border. And apparently, obviously, people died in the Holocaust as well at concentration camps.
Just 7 million people. That's
which is
all.
totally. It's just. It's not even the same conversation.
Utterly ridiculous. Okay, let's switch topics, Michael. And this is a big topic. I remember the first time we had you on the show, we talked about UNLV and Brandon McCoy and this investigation in regards to Nike. Do you have an update for us on what is going on as far as that case goes?
Well, I'll say this. My case has been set for trial now in New York for mid-November. I'm very much looking forward to that case being tried to a jury in New York. I'm looking forward to the jury hearing all of the evidence and the facts and ultimately passing judgment on my conduct. And I am highly confident that at the end of that case in New York, when all the facts and all the evidence come out, that I'm going to be exonerated. And I think a lot of eyes are going to be opened along the way relating to what has gone on here, not only in connection with my arrest and the prosecution of me in connection with that case, but also as it relates to Nike and what they've been up to and what they've been trying to hide and what their role is or was in connection with my arrest. So I think at the end of the day, a lot of people at Nike are going to have a lot of questions to answer, and I think a lot of these colleges likewise and some of these coaches are going to have to answer a lot of questions about what they knew and when they knew it and what they covered up and what players got paid a lot of money. This thing is ugly.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I wanted to ask you this. Speaking of ugly, as much as you have, a ton of supporters and you mentioned all the followers you have on Twitter, I've taken the brunt even of some of your haters out there that have prank called me, that have sent weird text messages to me, that have tried to even sabotage our interviews with you. It is unbelievable. I don't know why they would do that, but let me ask you this. Do you think part of it is the college basketball investigation, or do you think 90% of it are just idiot Trump supporters that just want to shut you up? Or do you think maybe a little bit of both?
Oh, I think 99.9% of it are people on the far right that are going after me because they want to shut me up, because they know that I'm effective. I'm a good communicator. They see me as a threat.
Right.
And they're trying to do everything in their power to sabotage me. Look, if I was some buffoon and wasn't effective, they'd be clamoring for me to go on every show possible and make an ass out of myself. Let's be frank about it. And Don Jr. would be frothing at the mouth to go opposite me, and Tucker Carlson would have me on every night, and Hannity, and the list goes on and on. But, these folks, it's really toxic. And you've witnessed it firsthand. You and I talked about it earlier today. What some of these folks are doing, is outrageous. They're impersonating me by using bogus email addresses, contacting journalists and others that I know. I was contacted by a handful of people in media today relating to this bogus email that somebody sent out under michaeljAvenatti@gmail.com, and they wanted to know if this email was from me. Well, it wasn't from me. It was someone impersonating me. But look, I don't know where we go from here. I mean, this is much bigger than, people going after Michael Avenatti. I mean, this is a much bigger problem, which is,
it's huge.
There's no decency. There's no decencies out the window. I mean, we are at the bottom of the barrel in toxicity, and I don't know how we ever repair the dialogue or the system in which we all operate. I just don't know where we go, but we're going downhill, and it's very, very concerning because, there'll be somebody after me, and I'm sure that there's a lot of people in the media that have to experience this, and we're losing track of the truth, and we're losing track of facts.
Well, it's
I think I've said this before. Once we lose track of a baseline set of facts, and everybody starts having their own version of the facts, and what I mean by that is everybody on the left tunes into MSNBC and they think that those are the facts, and everybody on the right tunes into Fox News and they think that those are the set of the facts, and we don't even have a common denominator of no, these are the facts, and we can disagree about what they mean. We've got a serious, serious problem, and I think that is going to sow the seeds for a huge threat to democracy ultimately.
And it almost seems like, and we've dealt with this, there's a couple of parody accounts aimed towards us, the Vegas Take. One's called the Vegas Fake, which uses a logo, our logo, slightly altered. But I've reported this account and other accounts 10, 15, 20 times. It seems like this is so rampant that Twitter can't even get around to stopping these accounts because it's happening so much.
Yeah, look, I could not agree with you more, and I know this is somewhat controversial. I mean, I've made some proposals on Twitter in the past, and I feel very strongly about this. Look, I think every Twitter account needs to be verified in some way. And what I mean by that is it needs to be tracked to a cell phone number or some verifiable form of identity where you can only have one account.
Right.
And, a lot of people want to have anonymous accounts, and I'm sure I'll get some blowback about this. I'm not a big fan of anonymous accounts. I'm just not, because I've seen what that allows people to do. But at a minimum, every account should be verified. And the reason why you're not seeing that, frankly, is because Twitter knows, and I've heard estimates of upwards of 60% of the accounts on Twitter are bogus, are bots, are fabricated accounts. It would not surprise me if that is accurate, but I guarantee it's probably at least 40%. And so what Twitter does not want to effectively clean up their subscriber base, because then all of a sudden their numbers for Wall Street, et cetera, go to the floor.
Right.
Then all of a sudden their users, are cut in half, which causes a problem with their shareholders and others. Mm-hmm. So they have a disincentive to clean up their platform. But, I mean, it's becoming a cesspool. Twitter is becoming a cesspool, and a lot of the things that made Twitter great are falling by the wayside because of how toxic it is and because of the trolls and the bots.
Yeah, and for the record, I just want to say, if you open up a Twitter account and you're anonymous, you are a coward if you go after people. I've said that time and time again, whether it's to you or us or anybody. But speaking of Twitter, I do want to bring this up. I'm sure you heard. O.J. Simpson opens up a Twitter account the other day, and he posts a video that says he wants to get even. Now, as an attorney yourself, what do you make of this? And if he threatens somebody, I don't even know if he's still on probation, but if he threatens somebody on social media, could that break his probation?
Well, I mean, it certainly could, depending on the level of the threat. I actually happened to see that video on his account, and I don't know what his follower base is now, but I mean, I saw him go from 0 to about, I think it was about 600,000 in maybe 48 hours. I don't know what his follower base is now. I think that initial video, the last time I saw it, it had like 10.5 million views. I don't know what it's up to now.
It's pretty high.
But, I mean, I guess it goes hand in hand with everyone's desire to, tune into the train wreck. And look, if that account continues, I wouldn't be surprised if ultimately, he ends up with 5, 10, 12 million followers. Gosh. In connection with that account. I mean, he could become a serious presence on Twitter just because of the nature of the platform and who he is.
Just unbelievably ridiculous. I want to go back to politics a little bit here. So it doesn't appear as though Robert Mueller is going to testify. Hope Hicks doesn't seem like she wants to even say where her desk was in the White House. What do you make of this situation? Do you think we'll ever hear from Robert Mueller again in regards to the report? And do you think Hope Hicks will talk? Do you think these people eventually are going to have to talk?
Well, I'm disgusted by the whole thing. Look, I'm just going to be frank with you. I mean, the Democrats have shown such weakness, and they have been such pathetic cowards for the most part relating to this process that I'm just disgusted by it. And this is exactly why a lot of people in these key electoral states and around the country, they don't vote Democratic because they see the Democrats as being weak. And for the most part, unfortunately, they're right. If the Republicans controlled Congress and this was a Democratic president, they would have already passed impeachment charges. The idea that Bob Mueller has not been subpoenaed to testify before Congress is ridiculous. The idea that Hope Hicks was permitted to testify behind closed doors is ridiculous. The idea that folks have not been held in severe contempt for their refusal to testify and produce documents is ridiculous. I mean, the report was, the findings were released, as I recall, on March 24. I mean, we're now well into June. We still haven't heard from Bob Mueller. There's, countless other witnesses who haven't testified. I mean, I don't know what the Democrats are doing, but they're letting this president off the hook. And they're basically, at this point, in my view, complicit with his conduct, and I'm disgusted by it.
Michael, some people are speculating that Nancy Pelosi, in some ways, is protecting Donald Trump. Do you think that is possible?
I don't think she's protecting Donald Trump. I don't think she's a fan of Donald Trump's, but I just don't think that she is looking at this situation properly from a political standpoint or from a duty standpoint. And frankly, duty should out-Trump, pun intended, politics at any point in time. The idea that somehow we're not going to have an impeachment inquiry or pass impeachment charges against Trump because it's a foregone conclusion that he's going to be acquitted in the Senate, in my view, is ludicrous, because I don't think it's a foregone conclusion. And even if it was, I think the American people need to be educated about what really happened here, because too many people don't know what happened. People aren't going to read some 400-page report.
Right.
I mean, it's absurd.
Yeah.
We live in an age of television and visuals. That's how people get their information, is visually. And when you allow people to hide behind closed doors, when you allow people to thumb their nose at the process by which they're subpoenaed to testify, you're basically complicit in the conduct of obstruction and otherwise, in my view.
One more Trump question. If you recall, Trump did an interview last week with Stephanopoulos, and in that interview, it was Donald Trump who said he would take dirt on a politician that he was running against from a foreign entity. He admitted he would do that, and then when he was chastised for it, a few days later, he said, well, I would take the information, and then I would go to the FBI. I mean, what do you make of these comments? It's ridiculous.
Well, I think he was telling the truth the first time he answered the question. I mean, there's no question in my view that he would absolutely accept information from any source, even if it was a foreign power, even if it was a foreign power with interest adverse to the United States, if it meant that it could assist him in winning the election. I mean, look, you can say a lot of things about this guy, and I have and I will, but you can't say he's not a fighter, and you can't say that he doesn't pull out all the stops in order to win. I mean, he's focused on winning, and that's the only thing that matters to him, is whether he can win or not. And so I think there's no question that he would accept such assistance from a foreign power. Relating to that interview, by the way, I thought the interview was very good. I thought Stephanopoulos did a very good job. But, I'm going to come to this is a very rare moment, by the way, but I'm going to come to the defense of Donald Trump on something.
Wow.
I mean, this is almost unheard of, okay? But this whole thing about how they use the outtake on the coughing, okay?
Yeah.
Remember the coughing incident?
I remember. Yeah, we spoke about that.
All these people criticize, Trump about the coughing incident and the whole bit. You know what? I don't think that was fair to Trump by any stretch of the imagination.
Really?
I think that was blown way out of proportion. I don't think it was fair by ABC to use it. I just don't. And I'll tell you why. Because as somebody who has done a lot of interviews, as you know, over the last 18 months, okay, I've done a ton of interviews, and I've done taped interviews, although most of my stuff's been live. but I've worked with a lot of big media organizations in setting those interviews up and giving access. And, it's kind of there's an unwritten agreement that when you have kind of like an outtake like that,
right,
that you don't use it.
Yeah.
Right?
Unless you say grab them by the P word. Unless you say grab them by the P word, then we can use that.
Well, yeah, but that's a situation where you're mic'd up. And this is a situation where a guy coughs in the Oval Office.
No, I hear you.
Trump looks like an ass because of the way he reacted to it. He looks like the petulant child that he is. No question about that.
Right.
But, I got to tell you, I just, and maybe it's because of my experience, but I didn't think that was fair to him because there's been numerous instances where I've been involved in taped interviews and, somebody slams a door or drops something or something happens and you basically reshoot it.
No, I understand. I understand what you're saying. We've actually broken some breaking news here on the Vegas Take. Michael Avenatti defending Donald Trump. I don't know if we'll see that in the future, but I am going to mark this down as a point in history.
I like it as a nice, clean transition into the Avenatti Hour next week.
I like it. Michael, I cannot wait until we do an hour next week. It is the Avenatti Hour. We are glad to do it every Wednesday from 7 to 8 p.m. We always love having you on. You're a smart guy. You're also extremely entertaining and very insightful. So we're glad we're teaming up to do this, Michael. And thank you so much once again for taking some time to join us tonight.
Absolutely, and we'll have a lot of fun during this hour. I'm looking forward to it.
All right, thanks Michael. Have a good one.
A lot, Michael.
There you go, attorney. There you go. Take it easy, attorney Michael Avenatti. Always love to have him on every Wednesday. And I'm going to tell you what we're going to do right now. We are going to get some reaction. We are going to take some calls on this interview, as we always do. What did you think of that interview? We'll discuss it. We'll talk about it. Give us a buzz. 702-257-5396 is the number to call. Again, that number if you'd like to be a part of the program. You won't find a more interactive show than the Vegas Take. Give us a call. Again, that number is area code 702-257-5396. Your reaction to that Michael Avenatti interview. Boy, we covered a lot of topics. So we'll get to all that and take your calls at 257-5396 when we come back. And by the way, Jerry Springer coming up in hour number 2 as well. You're listening to the Vegas Take right here on the all-new 101.5 FM, 720 AM, KDWN.
Kilmeade, Hannity, Levin, 101.5 FM, 720 AM, KDWN, Las Vegas, a Beasley Media Group station.